Hey guys, and welcome to a showdown by the fearsome and stalwart forces of the Dowie, led by Honeynut here, up against Abdul Rahman and his Vampire Count legions. This is a bit of an old school grudge match, and I've seen this matchup played quite a few times in recent kind of tournaments and so forth. There seems to be a matchup that both factions like quite a bit, and I can certainly see why. Dowie absolutely fantastic in the grind game are as counts, and counts do have relatively good tools to pressure a back line with summons, black coaches and so forth. So let's see how the battle does unfold. Now for the forces of the Dowie in the front line, we do have the most cheap and cheerful of all dwarf warriors, the miners, including the regiment of renowned Ekrand miners. These guys with their blasts and charges can often get fantastic value up against lightly armoured troops, and the undead certainly pack an abundance of those. My personal opinion on miners is to have them in a secondary battle line to ensure you can get all of those blasts and charges off, but then again the vampire counts are rather slow, so this front line will still have plenty of opportunity to throw those charges. In the central pocket here we have the real elite backbone of a good Dowie anti-vampire counts build, and that is Iron Drakes with Trollhammer torpedoes. These guys do ridiculously good burst damage, anti-large, and have a relatively decent range. We also have some Iron Drakes on the right hand flank to bring the fire belching mechanics of the Dowie into the action. In the back here we have the flame cannon, an incredibly underrated piece of artillery, fantastic in this matchup. It can shred units of Graveguard before they even get a chance to get any value themselves. They're going to be protected here by a unit of Dragonback Slayers. Slayers of course fantastic here as well. We have one basic unit of miners as well as the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass on the left hand side, and up in the skies we have a Gyrocopter with Brimstone gun, which if unimpeded in the air can be absolutely lethal. However, Fellbats are quite common here, and they can really shut them down quite easily and distract them at least. We have a Master Engineer, a character we don't get to see terribly often at all. Going to be very interested to see how he does with his long-range armor-piercing shots. He also comes in with the Fiery Ring of Fury, which is going to really help clear chaff. The fact he does magic damage as well will help up against Cane Wraiths and the like. We have a basic Fane, dropping it in the front line, bringing the Rune of Slowness to slow down the enemy, of course, and the Ironbeard's Ring. This gives a plus 22% weakness to fire damage, really going to help support those Warriors of Dragonfire Pass and the Flamethrower style units. And of course we have Grombrindle, who I think is almost a must pick in this matchup simply due to the magic damage he brings. And he's going to be coming in with his Flash Bomb, and of course Grombrindle has no fear, and he's a badass warrior of legend, so of course he is unbreakable. Now across the field for the forces of the Vampire Counts we have Manfred Von Karstein up on top of his mighty dreaded undead dragon, coming in with an absolute bucket ton of spells. We have the Master of the Black Arts, as well as Raise Dead and Invocation of Nahek. Although it looks like the rest of it is just Pestilent Breath and Sword of Unholy Power. Good to see Manfred getting some action. Don't get to see him terribly often at all recently. We have some Blood Knights over on the flanks here, making their way through the Dusty Dunes to try and flank the enemy, and double Fellbats up in the skies, who are certainly going to have their little bat wings full, trying to harass the Gyrocopters where possible. In the front line, we have some zombies, of course. It isn't any Vampire Counts build without some decent, just undeadly, horrible mushes of blood and bone. The zombies charging forward. These guys here to absorb the damage. They won't be able to do too much themselves, however. And we have Skeleton Warriors in a secondary battle line, backed up by the more elite core of this build, which is going to come in the form of Cane Wraiths. Now, these guys are a bit of a double-edged sword here. They're not going to be taking too much damage from the enemy. Dwarves don't have a huge amount of magical damage output, but at the same time they do magic damage themselves, and the dwarves of course have that natural resistance, but they do have relatively good armor piercing stats, which will hopefully let them break through that thick armor. We have Regiment of Renowned Skeleton Warriors and some Graveguard with great weapons in the back here, fantastic armor piercing capabilities. We do have a Varghul for a bit more punch, a Corpse with the Unholy with the Unholy Lodestone, and a Banshee in the front line, which again, real double-edged sword, so going quite risky with the Ethereal picks here. Ethereal versus the Flame, who will come out on top, we'll have to find out and see. Manfred is going to be floating over on this flank, being protected by the Fellbats as well as the Blood Knights, looking to try and come down the hill and really pressure the back line, and that's something the undead are certainly going to have to do here. They need to shut down that flame cannon and those Iron Drakes, or they will just delete most Vampire Counts builds single-handedly. So in come the Iron Drakes. They are going to be flaming up towards Manfred, who is currently summoning some zombies into the back line, just trying to harass the Dwarfs as the undead legions do approach. Give them something to think about and try to shut down these units as long as possible. Flame Cannon is going after the Banshee, doing some pretty nice damage despite that ethereal status, and that is just because, you know, if you get hit by a giant fireball, it doesn't really matter what you are, it's still going to hurt because it does so much damage. Grombrindle is being used to push out wide here on top of the Banshee, needs to drop his smoke bomb so he can indeed catch her, but it looks like she is just about going to be able to scurry away without taking it too much damage, so a good little bit of micro from the counts to escape what would have been a deadly situation. Flame Cannon is now belching fireballs into the lines of the Skeleton Warriors, already making them crumble and having a huge impact on the battle, and now they're probably going to be switching targets back to some of the more elite troops. Vargulf has pushed forward, and the reason the Counts player wants to do this is to try and bait out some of those blasting charges, but it looks like the miners are going to have their wits about them and they are not on fire at will, which is good to see for sure. Big Breath Attack did come down the line though, roasting some miners, and now there's a big old fat gap in this Dowie build, and it looks like the Cane Wraiths are going to be trying to push through to annihilate it where possible. Blasting charges are underway, being launched into zombies though, which aren't the greatest targets, and up in the skies the Felbats are feasting quite happily upon the Gyrocopter Brimstone Gun crewmen. Dragon does float down over on this flank on some miners with blasting charges, trying to take them out of the game. They're relatively isolated over on this right-hand flank, and there's not too much which can push out and support them. Grombrindle having to currently fall back and try to aid his back line as more Felbats have darted down on top of the Iron Drakes, but Warriors of the Dragonfire Pass are here to intercept and do some pretty nice damage to them. They should be able to clear them out. The Master Engineer continuously firing in at the moment, and it probably looks like, yeah, he's going after the big man himself, Manfred, and is protected by the Thane. As for the front line, it looks like the miners are starting to struggle. They didn't get off all their blasting charges, and they are being forced back by some of the larger threats, the Vargulf and Graveguard in particular doing some decent damage, and the Cane Wraiths are simply taking next to no damage up against these miners and slowly pulling them apart. Real sticky unit, the Cane Wraiths, for the Dwarfs to deal with. Thane is going to start pushing forward, it looks like, to try and come and rescue Grombrindle, who has found himself in an absolute horde of undeadly horrors, but he's going to be good up against all of them. The Cane Wraiths certainly do not want to be in this matchup. I would pull them out as soon as possible and bog down Grombrindle with the Skeleton Warriors and zombies. Manfred is simply floating up in the sky now, but taking some big burst damage coming in from those Iron Drake's Trollhammer torpedoes down on the ground. Even the Flame Cannon launches a shot up into the sky, but unfortunately is a bit of an ambitious shot and a miss. In the back line, Blood Knight, Banshee and Manfred are now shutting down all of the Iron Drakes and Flame Cannon crew, but the Dragonback Slayers are here. They do have their hands full, not sure which of these combatants to go after. Blood Knights, though, are going to be pulling back, looking to cycle charge. Manfred, as well, is now being dogged by the ever-pesky Dowie, and a few of these brave Iron Drakes are holding him in place, allowing the Dragonback Slayers to catch up, deliver that slow, and Manfred is in big trouble here, guys. He should be able to use his mass, though, to get up into the skies as the Skeleton Warrior flank is now starting to put pressure on the enemy. Gyrocopters unfortunately haven't managed to get too much value. Felbat's been distracting them pretty much the entire game, and now we can see a mixture of Graveguard and Regiment of Renowned Skeletons are pushing through, but despite all the backline pressure, the Flame Cannon has been fully operational this entire game, and here we see a glorious use of that fiery Ring of Fury from the Thane there, which just deletes a unit of skeletons. They were a summon, actually might have been zombies there, zombies or skeletons, but it helps clear out the chaff, frees up these characters as well to come back and support the back line. Very even game so far, balance power slightly in favour of the Vampire Counts. Miners do come back though and launch one more blasting charge volley into the midst of the enemy. Dragonback Slayers incredibly healthy, which is good news for them, although the Iron Drakes of Trollhammer torpedoes have now been forced off by the Vargulf, and real effective cycle charging coming in from the Blood Knights of the Vampire Count player. However, it looks like one unit is going to be able to escape to the higher ground before launching some shots down range, although they may actually be charging into glorious combat here. I know they're just trying to get their line of sight and bearings active once more. Flame Cannon is now firing point-blank range into these elite units, particularly the Graveguard here, who have been pinned in by the White Dwarf, and these fiery balls of doom. Point-blank range coming in, doing some massive burst damage, going to enable the White Dwarf to clean up these troops very effectively here, and then bounce over to perhaps save the Thane, who has found himself slightly surrounded. Balance power is going more and more in favour of the Counts at the moment, but in my personal opinion, the the Dwarfs are looking very strong here. Manfred Von Karstein once again floating out wide, trying to feast upon some of the weaker units of the Dwarf roster, where they're not supported by their characters, but he probably needs to start doing some cycle charging on top of the Thane and the White Dwarf. There's not too much left in the build which can drag them down. Over in the distance, though, some good picks coming up here as well by the Counts. Blood Knights and Cane Wraiths being used to completely shatter the Warriors Dragonfire paths. They can now bounce along this back line, deleting all these extra dwarf units, pushing that balance power more and more in favour of the Counts, as well as taking away any possibility for Dowie reinforcements. The Corpse Cart is going to be going toe-to-toe with the Master Engineer, who's actually having none of this and decided to run away from the lumbering Lodestone. I think he should probably turn and fight it. He'd have quite a good time there all round. The Banshee is slowly shutting down the Flame Cannon, but still all three pieces are operational. It looks like, though, they are struggling to get some more of their shots off. Another fire ring is popped along the Blood Knights, but it's much better coming in up against infantry. If it could have caught the Cane Wraiths there, I think would have been a good boon for the Dwarves. But this is a huge changing point of the game. Manfred Von Karstein has been caught here by Grombrindle and the Thane, taking absolutely huge burst damage there. He really needs to pop some Invocation Hex on himself, but you can see he's relatively close to his healing cap. A big breath attack coming down, though, on top of the White Dwarf, but it looks like he managed to duck underneath it and dodge forward, not taking any damage at all. So good play there by the Dowie to recognise that threat, as the Trollhammer torpedoes do lace Manfred with a load of explosive damage. Every shot which does connect does huge work. Manfred is starting to crumble now, and him going down like this is boding very badly for the Counts. Flame Cannon getting some huge work on the Blood Knights as well. Manfred desperately trying to stabilise and pull himself away from any ranged damage, but yeah, minus 10 leadership, down to 200 health. He is probably doomed at this point, and it looks like army losses is starting to set in. Cane Wraiths and Banshees still going strong, but the Blood Knights themselves have been caught by the Dragonback Slayers and are getting dragged and slowly pulled apart. Iron Drakes, the Flamethrower version, have actually quite a nice niche here as well, lowering the leadership of the Counts and forcing them to crumble a little bit quicker. And it is going to be a Pyrrhic victory, guys, for the forces of the Dowie. Very well played to these two true champs. Thank you as well for Honeynut for sending this one in, and Abdul Rahman for a fantastic game all round. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, feel free to give the video a big old thumbs up and subscribe for more Total War Warhammer content. It super helps out the channel, and I've been really overwhelmed with the support recently. It's been awesome, and feel free to comment below. I can no longer unfortunately reply to all the comments, but I do read every single one, and they really do give me a good chuckle. There was a fantastic one the other day about something I had said about some Spearmen being cheap and cheerful and happy to be there as a dragon charged into them and devoured their souls. But anyway, well played to both of these true champions. Honeynut in particular, I thought, brought a really fun and useful build. The Flame Cannon is, I can't sing the praises of the Flame Cannon enough in this matchup. I think personally it is fantastic here, rocking over 3,000 damage value and 22,000 damage dealt. And despite this, I don't think it was even used to its maximum capacity. It spent quite a long time shooting the Banshee and other units like that, where if it had focused on the Graveguard a little bit earlier, I think it could have got some even more value. But particularly using Dowie characters who are, famous for their stalwart nature, holding the line for a long time and taking ages to grind down, to pin in key units and allowing the Flame Cannon to do some huge burst damage, really helps and works very effectively with the Thane when he comes in with that ring which makes everything around him have that weakness to fire. It just becomes an absolute lawnmower. Apart from that, really fun build all round. Miners unfortunately didn't really get to use the best of their blasting charges, but still a cheap front line to hold back the enemy as long as possible and allow the Iron Drakes to do some relatively decent damage. Despite this, the Vampire Count player did manage to bust into that back line multiple times and do some really good targeting. I'm a big fan of his Blood Knight play. You can see these guys got pretty good damage dealt, over 10,000, and got some good damage value back as well. And the Vargulf was kind of a hammer on the right-hand side, as the Blood Knights and Manfred were on the left, doing some good job there. But unfortunately, the stickier units managed to kind of get stuck more in the front line and couldn't get on top of the key targets they wanted to quick enough. And because of that, the Dwarfs were able to endure, rally their troops once more, and slowly drag down the big scary units. And once your Vampire Counts have lost their characters and some of the harder hitting units, they really do start to crumble and fall apart all round. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed. Until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.